The food industry is facing challenges as disease infects the supply chain. African swine fever, salmonella, and E. coli outbreaks are running rampant as the CDC struggles to keep it contained and under control. Here to help us take a closer look is Todd Horwitz, Chief Strategist at Bubba Trading. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Christy. Thanks for having me on.
So African swine fever is wreaking havoc to China's hog farms, which could push pork prices in China up to $4.90 per kilogram in 2020. That's a 78% increase from the current price. So already pork prices are up 40% since May 2018, and China is the world's largest producer of pork. So something like this is definitely going to affect the global supply. Who else will be impacted?
You know what? I think we've accounted for the global supply. If you go to the markets, which will give you more of the determination of price, hogs did have a 42% increase over the last few months based on the fear of what was happening. Now they've dropped back about 10% because we can now understand where we are with this crisis. And of course, one thing nice about hogs is that they have the ability to recreate very quickly. So I don't think that it's going to be a major ordeal or a major problem going forward unless this disease expands, similar to what the PED virus did about 5 years ago. But right now it looks to be fairly well contained, and that's exactly what the markets are saying right now, because we have seen some selling and some pullback in the price of hog futures.
Well, as long as the hog supply stays, this won't be a problem. But right now, the problem is even more compounded by the rising feed costs that are exceeding the price of hogs. The U.S.-China trade war increased the price of soybeans, which makes up a significant portion of animal feed, making the business of hog farming unprofitable. Are we seeing an increase in beef and chicken production now as the traditional hog farmers look to hedge themselves?
Well, I think when you look at costs and you look at feed, we're in this tariff war, but in the meantime, grain prices in the United States are at lows they haven't seen for months, maybe, some for 6 to 8 months. So, again, and China does have the ability to go ahead and buy from other sources. So I don't see that stuff playing out price-wise going forward. Again, I think that one thing we can learn from what's going on is that markets are extremely efficient in getting to where they have to be. So as you look at it, there are some issues out there, and if they get worse, it could create more of a problem. But for now, they seem to be fairly well under control. And again, you can only really go by what the cost of goods are, and grains are lower and hogs are lower. So to me, it tells me that everything's under control.
So there are some other implications, I think, to this. China is the biggest importer of soybeans, but with the escalation of the trade war, we saw soybean imports drop by 14% in the first quarter for the first time in 15 years. How is the U.S. ag market taking this?
It's not taking it very well. That is, soybeans have been down again. They're back below the $9 level, and they look like they're under some pressure. One of the big problems with the American soybean market right now, not only are we having the trouble with China and them not importing enough, but we've had bumper-to-bumper crops the last 3 years. So we've got such an oversupply that we have to work through that prices could continue to fall in the soybean market, which, again, goes back to where the inflation issue is in the overall economy.
So let's take a look at the U.S. market. Now, the CDC recently reported that they're investigating a case of an E. coli outbreak. This multi-state outbreak is the largest seen in 20 years, and they're still trying to trace the source of that. What do we know so far?
Well, there's not a lot known so far because they're still researching, but we are seeing Kroger and some of the others, do callbacks and saying that there is an issue. So we understand that there is an issue now. It hasn't become an epidemic yet, but certainly it has the potential to become one. And I think it's something that we have to watch over the next few weeks to make sure. I think they'll get it under control. But right now, again, we could get to a very serious problem unless they can trace it back to the source, which they still have not been able to do.
I think they're also investigating a case of salmonella outbreak as well, which has been linked to raw tuna. The states have had multiple food recalls at Kroger's and Whole Foods, as you said. So what's the story there?
Well, I think, again, we're having some issues, and usually salmonella is usually more often caused by some carelessness by the way something was packaged or the way something was handled. So I think that will also be found out. Again, we're very sharp in tracing these sources back once we initiate and find that there is a problem. So I think once we get to that point and they locate the problem, I think that will be solved. But salmonella typically is not usually in the chain. It's usually something that's done by a careless employee or something somewhere that actually causes that to happen.
Yes, and then we've seen that ripple across multiple food processing places as they have had recalls on like sliced fruits and vegetables, etc. Todd Horwitz, thank you so much for your time, Chief Strategist at Bubba Trading. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.